Zombie Reddit, today's story is...
My family wrote me off as the disappointment when I was a teenager. 10 years later, they discovered that I was their only hope, and what I did changed everything. My name is Charlie. I'm 24 years old and I'm a woman. My parents threw me out of the house when I was just 16. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with a basement, which was my brother Andrew's room. He is 28 and was always the family favorite. I was the disappointment. I was never very interested in studying. I tried, but school just wasn't my thing. I barely passed exams and really had no idea what to do with my life. I wasn't attracted to sports or clubs, nothing that would make me look like a promising daughter. My parents basically gave up on me. When I turned 16, they decided they needed my room for something more useful. Andrew was at university near home and still living with them to save money. They said I needed a proper study space to concentrate on my future. So they threw me out on the excuse of punishing me for my bad grades and sent me to live with my grandparents. I cried, I pleaded, and I promised to improve, but nothing mattered. They had already made up their minds and I had to pack my bags and leave. At first, I was devastated. I was a 16-year-old teenager, not a rebel who took drugs or got into fights. I was just normal, not standing out in any way, but not causing any problems either. But for my parents, that was reason enough to send me away. My grandparents took me in without asking any questions. They lived about 40 minutes away, so they didn't send me across the country, but I was no longer at home. The first few months were difficult. I felt angry, sad, and confused, as if I had been thrown away. My grandparents were kind but old-fashioned. They didn't fully understand why my parents did what they did, but they didn't question it either. For them, my parents had the right to make decisions for me, period. I tried to continue with school, but I had no motivation. In the end, I dropped out. That's when I went into survival mode. I needed money, and I didn't want to be a burden on my grandparents, so I started looking for work. At first, it was small stuff: babysitting, helping out at a local restaurant, temporary jobs with no contract. Then I got a job in a retail store. The pay was bad, but it was something. Over the next 2 years, I worked in many places: restaurants, auto repair shops, warehouses, probably everything. However, I learned a lot, things that school never taught me, like managing money, dealing with customers, standing up for myself when a manager tried to cheat me out of my pay. My grandparents never asked me for money, but I helped whenever I could. I bought groceries, fixed things around the house, and even paid some bills when I had extra money. They never said it, but I think they were proud of me. I wasn't the lost cause my parents made me believe. By the time I turned 18, I had saved enough to do something more meaningful. I didn't want to be stuck in dead-end jobs forever, so I researched trade schools. That's how I found carpentry. It just made sense to me. I always liked working with my hands, and the idea of creating something tangible, something useful, felt right. I enrolled in a carpentry course and gave it my all. Trade school wasn't easy, but it was nothing compared to high school. This time, I really enjoyed learning. I wasn't sitting in a classroom forced to memorize things I didn't care about. I was building objects, using tools, calculating measurements. It was practical. It made sense. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was good at something. After finishing my course, I got a job with a construction company. It paid well and I loved what I did. But I didn't stop there. I started finding and restoring old furniture as a side business. It started as a hobby, but I realized I could make good money from it. People loved the look of restored antique furniture, and I had the skills to breathe new life into old pieces. I set up an online shop, posted my work on social media, and slowly started to build a customer base. Fast forward to today. I make good money. I have my day job, but my side hustle brings in almost as much. Last year, I even went back and got my GED, not because I needed it for my career, but because I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. Andrew, on the other hand, has absolutely succeeded in life. It's as if you looked up success and favorite son in the dictionary and found his picture. He went to a top business school, got a cushy job at an investment firm, and has been climbing the corporate ladder ever since. Last year, he bought a huge, ridiculously big house with more space than 2 people could ever need after getting engaged to his longtime girlfriend. And, of course, 2 months ago, they had this perfect wedding taken straight out of Pinterest. I went mainly out of obligation. I turned up, congratulated the happy couple, made small talk with some distant relatives, and then left early. I wasn't going to sit through hours of speeches and toasts about how amazing Andrew is and how proud our parents are of him. No, thank you. I did my bit. I smiled for the family photos and left before dessert. Now, what happened last week? It was so ridiculous, I still can't believe it. My parents contacted me. Yes, the same parents who threw me out when I was a teenager because I wasn't good enough. And they asked if they could stay with me for a while. I was genuinely surprised. I had to take a minute to process what I was hearing. Of course, my first question was, why? What happened? At first, they were vague. They just said, "We got scammed and soon we won't have anywhere to stay." No more details. No real explanation. Just a vague story of things went wrong. I may not have an elegant business degree like Andrew, but I'm not stupid. So I asked the obvious question, why don't you stay with Andrew? At first, they gave me some excuse about how he's newly married and they don't want to bother him. Yeah, right. The same parents who had no problem making me homeless at 16 to give him a study room suddenly care about personal space? I didn't believe it, so I insisted. Come on, tell me the truth if you really want my help. And then, after a long pause, they finally admitted it. They asked Andrew, and he said no. Apparently, my dear brother, who lives in a house big enough to house a small country, told them he has no room. I almost laughed out loud when I heard that. How the tables have turned. The golden child, their pride and joy, the one they sacrificed me for, he shut the door in their faces. I wasn't going to be their second choice. I told them I'd think about it. And they asked me how long it would take me to decide. I just said, I'll let you know when I let you know, and hung up. I didn't even need to think about it. They weren't welcome here, but I wanted to make them wait a little. 2 days later, I finally sent them a text message. And let me tell you, this was probably the meanest thing I've ever done, and I have no regrets. I said, "Hi, I've thought about it, and you're more than welcome to stay in my room. You know the one you turned into Andrew's study? There should still be enough room for both of you. Enjoy." I never got a message back. Instead, they called me several times. I ignored each call. Then they sent these long messages about how family should help each other. And we are still your parents. Oh, now we're playing the family card. Funny how that only comes up when they need something. This is where things get complicated. My girlfriend thinks I should let them stay for a while, or at least help them find a place. She is clearly a better person than me. She thinks that even though they were horrible to me, I should be the bigger person. I understand where she's coming from and I love her, but I just don't have it in me to be so generous. These people dismissed me as if I were nothing, and now I'm supposed to play the good daughter. I don't know. Am I being too harsh? Should I at least help them find a place or just keep ignoring them? I feel no guilt in saying no, but my girlfriend is making me doubt myself. What do you think? Update 1. Hi everyone. I know it's only been a day since I posted my story, and honestly, I don't know. I wasn't expecting the kind of response I got. I'm overwhelmed by all the messages, advice, and support. I even got some comments telling me that I should forgive my parents and be the bigger person. That, yeah, I don't know about that, but I appreciate everyone who took the time to comment. Anyway, I'm back with an update because things have just taken a turn. I got a call from my cousin Sandra, 30 years old, earlier today. She told me that my parents called her for help, which honestly didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was the fact that she had no idea that I was kicked out when I was 16. I was in shock. When I told her the whole story, she literally fell silent for a few seconds before bursting into tears. She said, "Wait, are you telling me that you were kicked out for Andrew's study room, and now they're asking you for help?" "Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying." Then he blurted out, "Okay, but did you hear about what really happened to them?" I told him I hadn't. I thought it was just some run of bad luck, maybe a business failure or unexpected medical bills or something like that. But no. What he told me next was absolutely crazy. It turns out that my father developed a serious gambling problem, not just the casual kind where he plays a little poker with his friends. He was completely addicted. Apparently, he started going to casinos a few years ago thinking he could win some extra money. I guess it started out small, just a few $100s here and there. But over time, he got deeply involved, losing a large part of his retirement plan, 401k. Sandra told me it got so bad that my mom actually threatened to leave him at one point, but instead of stopping, my dad doubled down. He was convinced that if he kept playing, he would win it all back. He started taking these gambling trips without telling anyone, maxing out credit cards, and even borrowing money from a friend who was really just a shady guy charging insane interest rates. And, of course, he lost even more money. So now, my mom panicked because she realized they were practically financially ruined. So instead of cutting her losses and figuring out how to recover as normal people, she decided to fix everything in the worst possible way, by getting into a multi-level marketing scheme. Sandra told me that my mother got caught up in some exclusive business opportunity from one of her friends. You know the type, those scam companies that promise huge profits if you just invest a little money up front. What she had to do was buy a bunch of products, which she now had to resell and recruit other people to do the same. The company sold things like health supplements and miracle skincare products. They claimed their products could cure all sorts of things: acne, arthritis, poor digestion, you name it. And my mother bought it hook, line, and sinker. She became one of those multi-level marketing people overnight. She started messaging everyone, family, friends, and former coworkers, trying to get them to join her business. She posted on Facebook daily with captions like, "Who wants to be their own boss? Message me for an amazing opportunity." Multi-level marketing schemes are not businesses. They are just scams disguised as businesses, and instead of making money, my mother just kept losing more. To be successful, she had to keep buying inventory, and when she couldn't sell it, she bought more, convinced that she just needed a better strategy. So between my father's gambling and my mother's multi-level marketing obsession, they were already in serious financial trouble. But then, because these two clearly had so much financial wisdom, they made their biggest mistake yet. Their house was completely paid for. That was the one thing they had going for them. But instead of being grateful for that security, they used it to take out a huge loan. And what did they do with that money? Well, my father decided that he was now a financial expert. So he put a large amount into some once-in-a-lifetime investment. And, of course, that investment turned out to be a scam. Some guy convinced my dad that he had this guaranteed way to double his money. And because my dad thought he was smarter than everyone else, he handed over a huge chunk of his savings. And guess what? The guy disappeared. Just vanished. No money. No explanation. Nothing. My dad tried to report him, but let's face it, he was scammed. And there was nothing he could do about it. At the same time, my mother's multi-level marketing empire completely collapsed. She couldn't sell the ridiculous amount of products she had accumulated. And no one was joining her team anymore. She had spent everything on this scheme thinking she was about to become a millionaire. Instead, she was left with boxes of useless products and zero money to show for it. And now they are completely broke. The bank is seizing their house because they can't repay the loan. And they literally have nowhere to go. That's why they called me. That's why they were being so weird and vague about what happened. Because the real story is humiliating. Sandra told me all this because she thought that maybe if I knew the whole story, I would be more willing to help them. And honestly, if anything, it just made me even less willing. This is not my problem. They threw me out when I was 16. They didn't care where I lived, what I ate, or how I survived. And now, because of their reckless decisions, they expect me to step in and save them. No, I just won't. But now, of course, my girlfriend is really pressuring me to at least help them find a place. She keeps saying, "They're your parents, maybe they made mistakes, but they're still family." And I get it, I really do. But at the same time, where was that energy when I was struggling? So yeah, that's where I am now. I'm really curious to hear what you think. Should I stand firm, or am I being too harsh? Because right now, I feel like this is just karma doing its thing. Update 2. Hi everyone, it's been a week since my last update, and believe me, things have been interesting, to say the least. I don't even know where to start, but I guess I'll just dive right in. After my parents were rejected by me, they moved in with my cousin Sandra. And I have to say, It didn't take long for things to start getting complicated there. Apparently, they've been living in Sandra's spare room for the last few days. At first, Sandra was a bit unsure about having them at home, but she's always been the one who keeps the peace in the family. You know, the kind that lets you stay at their place, even if it's a bit of a struggle. But now, she's already starting to feel overwhelmed. She called me the other day and she was just venting. She told me that my parents are already causing some tension at her house. My father, for example, has started leaving his clothes everywhere, without bothering to put them in the laundry or anything. Sandra said it was as if he forgot that he was staying in someone else's house, and that he's acting like the guest room is his personal space. And don't even get me started on my mother. Apparently, she has been reorganizing Sandra's kitchen without asking. She has been moving pots and pans, organizing the pantry, and even throwing away food that she thinks is expired. Sandra is not a big fan of waste, so this really upset her. But when she tried to talk to my mom about it, my mom just shrugged and said, "I'm just trying to help." What bothers Sandra the most, though, is that my parents keep talking about me and Andrew. Apparently, every time Sandra talks to them, they mention how much better off Andrew is now. They constantly talk about how he's married, lives in a big house, and has everything handed to him on a silver platter. They also talk badly about Andrew's wife. My mother said she's too controlling. She probably doesn't even let him do anything without her permission. And my father just rolled his eyes and muttered about how Andrew has been brainwashed into thinking he's too good for us. Honestly, it's just exhausting. It's like they still hold some grudge over how things played out, even though I haven't spoken to them in ages. I don't get it. They expect me to open my arms to them and offer them a place to stay, but then they talk badly about me and my brother for no reason. It's like they haven't changed at all. Sandra has really been trying to figure out what their next move will be. She is as confused as I am about how they plan to recover. Sandra told me the other day that she overheard them talking in the living room about how they are working on a plan. But when Sandra asked them what that plan was, they just gave vague answers like, "We're still figuring it out." At this point, I really can't offer Sandra any advice. I told her it's her decision if she wants to continue putting up with their behavior or set some boundaries. I've been through my own struggles with them, and I really can't advise her on what to do with her own house and her own peace of mind. I will keep you all updated if anything changes, but for now, I'm just sitting back and watching the disaster unfold. I guess I'm not exactly surprised, but I'm definitely upset. Thanks for reading, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Update 3. Hi everyone! I know it's been a while, almost 2 months, and not much has really happened until last week. I thought I'd share the new update with you all. My parents are still living at Sandra's house, and I haven't heard much from them. That was until I got a call from Andrew, my brother. I was honestly surprised because we haven't spoken much recently. We've always kept a certain distance, but when he called, at first I didn't think much of it. We chatted a bit, nothing too deep, just how we were and what had happened in our lives, and then out of the blue, he asked me if I'd be willing to help out with half the rent if they decided to rent a small apartment. I stood there for a moment, somewhat taken aback. I wasn't expecting that kind of call from him. He said that our parents had been texting, calling him nonstop, even bothering his wife, and that he would rather just give them the money than have to deal with them anymore. He tried to convince me that it wouldn't even cost that much if we both shared the cost. But I was firm with him. I told him I wasn't going to help them. Not after everything they did to me when I was a teenager. They threw me out when I was 16, and I wasn't about to forget that and give them money. Andrew didn't understand, though. He said he didn't understand why I was acting this way and told me it's only money. It's not that much if we both help. But I didn't want to hear it. I said, "You can do what you want, but I'm not giving them a penny," and hung up. Honestly, I was frustrated because I couldn't see why I felt that way. The funny thing came after that. Yesterday, I called Sandra to see how things were going. She said Andrew was at his wit's end. Apparently, for the last week, he's been taking my parents to look at some affordable houses, ones he could afford. But my parents, being who they are, found something wrong with every single one. It was like they were making up problems just to avoid choosing one. Sandra said it was getting so bad that Andrew was losing his patience. Then last night, things finally came to a head. Andrew apparently yelled at them saying, quote, "Either way, you're going to have to leave Sandra's place. You can either take the last place I showed you or be homeless." At that point, my parents had no choice but to take the apartment he showed them. It's a studio that's not ideal, but it's better than nothing. So they finally agreed, and that's where they'll stay. Sandra is also trying to help my dad get a job at one of the branches of the retail store she manages. I guess she's trying to help him get back on his feet, but part of me still doesn't know how I feel about it. My dad has been out of work for so long, but I don't know if giving him a job is enough. I know he's been struggling, but the guy can be so stubborn. Then there's my mom, and she has some experience in accounting, and, well, the company I work for is looking for someone in that area. I'm not sure what to do here. Should I recommend her for the job? I'm torn because on the one hand, I want to help her get back on her feet, but on the other hand, she hasn't exactly been a role model in my life, and I'm not sure I want to mix business with family drama. I mean, it could work, right? I could be good at work, and I could give her a fresh start. But then again, what if it makes things more complicated? She's never been the easiest person to work with, and I'm worried about bringing that energy into my workplace. I'm just not sure if I'm ready to open that door yet, so now I'm in a dilemma. I want to be there for them in some way, maybe even help them out a little. But I also want to protect myself from being dragged into their mess again. I'm curious to know what you all think. Should I help her with the work or just let Sandra handle the family matters? Any advice would be appreciated because honestly, I'm just trying to figure out what's best for everyone here. Thanks for reading, and I'll keep you updated if anything changes. Update 4. Hi everyone. After reading all the comments and really thinking about it, I decided to call my mom. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I thought it was worth asking her if she would be interested in the job I mentioned. When I called her, I tried to keep it calm and casual, but she cut me off almost immediately. I said, "Hi Mom, I wanted to ask you if you're interested in a position that's opening up at my work. It's in accounting, and I think you might be a good fit." And she just snapped back, "No, I'm too old to work, and you should be ashamed of yourself for offering me a job instead of money. What I need is money, not a job." I tried to stay calm, even though my frustration was growing. I said to her, "Mom, this is ridiculous. You could get back on your feet with a steady job. I'm not going to give you money. And I'm not going to let you take the easy way out. If you really want to change your situation, you need to put in some effort." It was then that she became even angrier and started shouting at me, saying that I didn't understand how difficult her life had been and how she was too old to work now. She even went so far as to say that I should be ashamed of myself for not helping her in the way she wanted. She was saying things like, "You're my daughter. How can you be so insensitive?" I felt my anger rising, but I didn't want to get into a shouting match with her. I just told her I wasn't going to give her any money. She kept repeating herself, asking for the money, saying it was the only thing that would help her. It was honestly exhausting to listen to. After a while, I told her I had to go and hung up, but even after the call ended, I sat there for a few minutes feeling drained. Later that day, Sandra called me. She was telling me how things had been with my parents, and I could hear the frustration in her voice. She said that my parents had started to make her feel guilty for not helping more. They kept telling her how much they were struggling, and my mother even said it was a shame that I wasn't offering the money. I could tell that Sandra was also getting tired of hearing it. She told me that they were asking her for money every day, and she had to keep reminding them that she couldn't just give them cash whenever they asked for it. Sandra was basically shouldering the entire emotional burden of my parents' situation, and I could feel that she was starting to crack under the pressure. I wasn't sure what to say to her because I honestly didn't know what to do either. On the one hand, I didn't want to be the bad guy, but on the other, I wasn't going to let them manipulate me into giving them money. They had hurt me enough over the years, and I wasn't going to let them continue to do so, especially now that I had finally started to get my own life together. So yes, that's where I am now. My mother flatly refused the job, and Sandra is starting to feel the weight of it all. I haven't spoken to Andrew about it again yet, but I know he's probably dealing with his own frustrations. I just want to figure out what's best for me without feeling like I'm a terrible person. It's been a lot to process, and I'm just not sure where to go from here. Thanks for all the support, everyone.